there's a monster hiding in the remote forests, swamps, and rivers of the Congo Basin in Central Africa. It has a long neck, looks like a dinosaur, and is the size of an elephant, or maybe a hippo at least. That's what people who claim to have seen it say. It should have gone extinct millions of years ago, but this Congo's version of the Loch Ness Monster somehow survived. This creature is the Mokele Mbembe, which means one who stops the flow of rivers, and more folks are saying they've seen it lately. European explorers first heard the stories of this creature from the people living near the Congo River in the early 1900s. A German captain even included a description of the monster in his official report from his expedition. The locals told him the animal was of a brownish-gray color with smooth skin, a very flexible neck, and only one long tooth that could be a horn. Some of them mentioned a long, muscular tail, like that of an alligator. They also said that the creature lived in the caves, but climbed the shores even in the daytime to find some plants to eat. Locals also believed its favorite snack was a kind of liana with large white blossoms. Some of them even showed the German captain some fresh path the monster left leading next to those plants. And they warned him that Mokele Mbembe definitely didn't like humans and took down any canoe that would sail nearby. Dinosaurs were a real hit in pop culture in the 1910s, and several newspapers in Europe and North America wrote about the dino-like monster from Africa back then. In the later years, several expeditions traveled to the Congo Basin to search for Mokele Mbembe or interview claimed witnesses. They did not find any direct physical evidence, but collected many stories. One zoologist in the 1980s said he took a film of Mokele Mbembe, but the footage did not develop properly. Stories and movies like Jurassic Park have kept the dream alive that dinosaurs might still be hiding somewhere in deep forests. At some point, people stopped reporting sightings of the creature as often, so it almost became a forgotten legend. But it all changed recently, as many people claim to have witnessed the mythical monster with their own eyes. Cryptozoologists, those fans of mysterious creatures, believe it could be a dinosaur that, for some reason, didn't go extinct, related to a brachiosaurus or a diplodocus. This idea comes from how people describe seeing the creature, with a super long neck, a huge body, and a tiny head. They think it might have stayed hidden in the deep forests of Africa all this time. But scientists say that if it really were the last living dinosaur, we would have found some real proof by now, like a photo or bones or something showing it walking around the Congo Basin. Some expeditions that are trying to find proof the monster is real have even used sonar technology to scan the murky waters of Central African rivers and lakes in search of any large, unidentified creatures. Some people even narrowed down the monster's location to a specific remote lake, surrounded by untouched jungle in the swamps. So far, the search for evidence hasn't been successful. The explanation behind all the sightings of the Mokele Mbembe could be the changing ecosystem. More and more human settlements are moving into the huge Congo Basin rainforest. People aren't used to seeing large animals that live in the forest, so they believe they have witnessed the mysterious creature from their folklore. The human brain often fills in the gaps in something we don't know and uses imagination to explain it, especially if there's a ready-made version that everyone's heard of. But still, we can't completely rule out the possibility that there are some new, unknown species of animals hiding in the Congo forests. Maybe just not a missing dinosaur. Another legend, this time Mongolian, says there's a giant worm living deep in the Gobi Desert. Yep, similar to the monster you've seen in Dune. The creature, which is supposedly up to 6 feet long, can spit acid that could melt anything and shoot electricity. They say it spends most of its days hiding underneath the sandy dunes, but likes to come out during the wetter months of June and July. The people in the West first found out about the megaworm of the Gobi Desert thanks to an American paleontologist, Roy Chapman Andrews. This brave man was probably the inspiration for Indiana Jones. In 1926, he wrote about the creature in his book. At the meeting with Mongolian leaders, Andrews heard detailed descriptions of the creature, even though none of them had ever seen it themselves. One of them said it looked like a sausage that was about 2 feet long, with no head or legs. According to him, the worm was so poisonous that just touching it could instantly take your life, and it lived in the loneliest parts of the Gobi Desert. Andrews didn't think the creature was real, but he shared these stories again in another book. And then, stories of the monster spread around the world. In some of them, it's only 1 foot long. In others, it's as large as a human. Some say it looks like a snake, and some describe it as a caterpillar. Some people claim it has wings and can fly, and others think it could be a supernatural evil being without a body. The color of the creature also remains a subject of debate. It could be white-gray, brown, or even bright red. The stories of witnesses are probably so different because the creature doesn't even exist. In 1983, one scientist who was visiting the region heard that an old man had managed to finally catch the mysterious worm. He also found out there was a nest nearby and decided to risk it all and see it. But instead of a scary monster, there was a tartar sand boa inside. Luckily for the scientist, this snake is non-venomous, but it does have gray-brown scales and could match the description of the giant worm. When he showed it to the locals, supposedly all of them said it was the monster they had seen. Big expeditions from America, Britain, and New Zealand came to the Gobi Desert to try and find the creature. Many other adventurers came from all around the world on their own, but found no evidence the monster was real. But many Mongolians are sure the death worm is no fantasy. If you don't believe there's a monster in the Gobi Desert, how about one in Lake Worth in Texas? According to local folklore, there's a part human, part goat creature with scales and long clawed fingers hiding there. It all started back in July 1969, when locals claimed to have spotted this mysterious creature roaming around. The newspapers loved the story and started reporting about new sightings. One article said that the monster jumped out of a tree and landed on some guy's car. Another report claimed that the Lake Worth monster decided to throw an automobile tire at a group of people. Someone even managed to take a photo of the creature, and the newspapers published it. Locals started flocking to the lake at night, hoping to catch a glimpse of the creature, but no one could find any evidence it was real after all. The author of the monster's photograph later said it was most likely someone's prank, because the creature really wanted to be seen. Then, a reporter from the local newspaper received an anonymous letter saying that it was 3 high school students who decided to dress up and scare people. Even despite this, some cryptozoologists think it could have been an undiscovered primate species that walks on 2 legs. We don't know if the Worth monster is real, but it does one good thing and brings together the local community. Every year since 2009, they throw the Lake Worth Monster Bash.
Hey, it's possible that Jurassic World is not just a fantasy. Dinosaurs could really be walking, swimming, or flying around somewhere out there, but not on Earth. Some scientists think there may be planets far, far away from our solar system where slightly different versions of T-Rex and other dinosaurs live. They got the idea based on the fact that our planet used to have about 30% higher oxygen levels than today. That's why complex and intelligent life forms like dinosaurs could develop in the first place. They also want to explore basic building blocks that are the reason why we have life on Earth. These building blocks are something we know as amino acids. They make proteins, sugars, and genetic material, RNA and DNA. They're consistent and mainly exist in one shape or orientation. There are 2 ways they can be oriented, right and left. That means they mirror each other, just like our hands. It's something we call chirality. For life to exist, proteins must have one form, which means they can be oriented right or left. On our home planet, almost all living things, from the smallest bugs to whales and elephants, have amino acids with a left-handed orientation. We're not exactly sure why things are set that way. But there's a theory that's because of meteorites that crash-landed on Earth 4 billion years ago. They brought specific kinds of amino acids and some other organic materials to our planet and somehow set the pattern we have today. Maybe we could use special telescopes we created to search planets, especially those where conditions are similar to how they used to be on Earth back in time when dinosaurs existed. In that case, it would be better to watch them from a safe distance, because considering what they might look like, researchers say it might be a safer choice. That's a cool idea, but it's still very tricky. The history of life on our planet, especially that of dinosaurs, involved many catastrophic events and mass extinctions. There's always more room for new theories about dinosaurs. One of them says oil comes from dinosaurs. Interesting, but not true. Oil formed from the remains of sea animals and plants from millions of years ago. This was way before dinosaurs appeared. Tiny organisms ended up at the bottom of the sea. As bacteria decomposed animals and plants, they removed most of the oxygen and some other elements from them. It left behind only a sludge, which was mostly made of hydrogen and carbon. As time passed, those remains became covered with many layers of silt and sand. When the depth of the sediment increased to 10,000 feet or even more, heat and pressure turned the remains into natural gas and crude oil. It's possible that dinosaurs lived or fell in the sea and later became petroleum in the same manner. But no one has ever found crude oil containing their skeletons. So this is just an unproven theory. Then there's the feathered dinosaur theory, which, unlike the previous one, seems to have more foothold in reality. Back in 2010, researchers found evidence that 100 million years ago, there had been a dino species with ginger feathers. Another group of scientists claimed there had been a different species from 150 million years ago. Those dinos had freckles and reddish-brown feathers on the tops of their heads. The color patterns probably had their purpose. Maybe it was a way to communicate with other representatives of their species or to attract mates. But years later, scientists studied the Microraptor, also called a feathered dinosaur. They realized it had probably been more like a bird than a dinosaur. The key point is how birds replace their feathers. Birds that fly have to replace their feathers in a specific order, otherwise they won't be able to fly very well. And the Microraptor's fossils showed that this creature had changed its feathers in a similar pattern. So they're not really sure which category this animal falls into. Dinosaurs that had feathers shed a lot of their skin piece by piece, like dandruff. "Hey Bob, looking a little flaky there. Need a new shampoo?" Yeah, they didn't shed their skins like lizards do, as if they take off an old suit. When we talk about dinosaurs, we usually don't picture them as social creatures, more like isolated ones similar to lizards. But some researchers discovered an 80-million-year-old collection of clutches in the Gobi Desert. It means there were colonies of dinosaurs that protected their nests and guarded their young, similar to birds. Crocodiles are known for doing that too. Pterosaurs were flying dinosaurs, and pelycosaurs were fin-backed ones. Some studies have shown that these two species used their exaggerated head crests and sails or fins to get to their potential partners. There are many theories about their crests and what they were needed for, though. Some experts believe that was how dinosaurs regulated their temperature. Others think they needed a crest to steer through the air. It's hard to say anything for sure since their fossils are rare and they don't have living descendants. But the most likely option is that the crest had the same purpose as a peacock's tail and was used for selecting mates. The bigger the crest, the more chances a pterosaur had to get a partner. You know theropods, those scary meat-eating predators that are shown in most dinosaur movies? Well, they might have enjoyed eating plants way more than tearing flesh. Not all of them, but it's possible that many of them weren't as fierce as we might think. Those big scary ones, like T-Rex, could be exceptions rather than the rule. The thing is, movies show these creatures to be way faster than they probably were in reality. They could probably run just a little bit more quickly than the average human runner. Scientists studied the diet of coelurosaurs. Those seem to be the closest relative to birds. It was hard to figure it out because some of the dinos from this group had peg-like teeth, or in some cases, no teeth at all. To understand what they ate, researchers had to look for direct evidence and check if there was anything in their stomachs. And after they discovered certain things, including a beak with no teeth, they realized these fellas had followed a vegetarian diet most of the time. Even some famous ones, such as velociraptors, could be just innocent plant eaters and not terrifying beasts from Jurassic Park and our childhood nightmares. Over 10 years ago, scientists found fossils of a small dinosaur. It was a creature as big as a parrot with long legs. It came from a family with some of the most famous predators we know about, such as T-Rex and Velociraptor. Most dinosaurs that lived on land had 5 fingers, but later some of them ended up with fewer fingers. This new one they discovered was special because instead of having 3 fingers, which was more common for its family, it had just 1 finger with a sharp curved nail at the end of each front limb. This creature probably used this 1 finger to dig into insects' nests to feast. Even though we know all about the asteroid that wiped out dinosaurs, some have other theories. One paleontologist even had an idea that dinosaurs had possibly reached their end because they had been eating one another. This especially worked for ancestors of fierce, scary predators such as the Tyrannosaurus rex. It's possible they ate so many eggs of other dinosaurs that many species just went extinct. Once they started eating the eggs of very big dinos that we know as sauropods, it's possible they started getting bigger too. And no dinosaur mother could stop them from eating her eggs because she couldn't be around all the time. There were other big predatory animals that ate eggs, even early mammals. But in any case, later research showed dinosaurs couldn't have eaten enough eggs to have caused mass extinction. And that's all I have to say about that.
Let's go with the widely accepted theory that a massive asteroid hitting our planet wiped out the dinosaurs. It does make you wonder why mammals made it though. One idea is that mammals were better prepared. Back then, they weren't the most popular creatures on Earth, but they were pretty diverse. They bred themselves into a huge range of species, and it might have saved them. Some said mammals survived because they were smaller, so they needed fewer resources. As they had to constantly hide from dinosaurs, they managed to survive in difficult environments, way before the hit. But let's say the asteroid never came, and it never damaged the environment the dinosaurs thrived in. It's safe to say our fauna would look different today. Take the mighty Titanosaur. It's considered the biggest land animal to ever exist, some reaching lengths of about 7 standard cars lined up. It had a neck so long that it would have needed a 2-story home just to fit. It also had a plant-based diet, so it ate from the ground, but from very tall trees too. There was nothing much left to eat for, say, the little Jeremiah, a mammal that lived roughly at the same time, but was as small as a popsicle stick. Let's take this thought experiment a bit further and imagine we have a time machine that could transport today's mammals to the time of the dinosaurs. Some scientists say they have gotten bigger, so there's a chance they could survive, right? They're also much more evolved in terms of their diets and skills. Others say definitely not. They couldn't survive, mostly because they're too small to compete with dinosaurs. An adult T-Rex was just about the size of a bus. It probably wouldn't waste its time trying to capture food that's human-sized, for instance. They'd probably be on the lookout for prey the size of a car, or even bigger, like an elephant. And it most likely wouldn't take them long to win the fight. Sure, a T-Rex might munch on something smaller too, but only if it's really hungry and has no other alternative. If we had no choice but to send some mammals back in hopes they could survive, what would be our best bet? Some say the chimpanzee could be a good candidate, as these primates build their sleeping nests higher up in trees. This might have kept them safe from the carnivore dinosaurs living on land. There's no real evidence of dinosaurs being able to fly, but we do know there might have been some reptiles that took to the sky for transportation. Like pterosaurs, the flying lizard. These ones like to eat fish and smaller animals, but who's to say they wouldn't pick up a chimpanzee given the opportunity? Another good candidate might be the hyena. Today, the spotted hyena is the most common big carnivore in Africa, and it's highly adaptable. They could snatch up all sorts of prey by themselves or even in larger units. They can digest most parts of their prey, including the skin and bones. These animals aren't picky eaters, and they wouldn't mind chewing on parts that other creatures would gladly skip on. Not to mention, they'll eat fruits too if needed. Hyenas are overall healthy and sturdy animals, with some studies showing they hardly ever get health problems. But like any other animal on this planet, the hyenas also have their weaknesses. We still don't know why these creatures can't be found in Europe anymore. But some research suggests they found it hard to coexist with humans and wolves. Also, they're not very adapted to living in forests. Orcas might have been able to rub elbows with the dinosaurs too. These creatures also don't have any natural predators, which earned them the nickname the wolves of the sea. That's because they go out looking for prey the same way wolves do, in groups. Orcas may be related to dolphins, but we can hardly call them friendly, as there have been cases of them sinking ships on purpose. They're highly intelligent animals that spend time together and are very organized. They also do this thing where they often take down more prey than they're prepared to eat. It may be because they see this experience as training. Other theories suggest orcas are so intelligent that they look for food in advance, even though they're not hungry yet. It might also be because whenever they want something to munch on, they're looking for the best quality food there is. The reason why they might not survive in the dinosaur era, though, is the global temperature. Back in the Mesozoic era, our planet was seriously hotter, several degrees warmer than it is today. Orcas prefer living in colder waters, but you'll find them in all oceans and most seas. Ostriches are the no-brainer answer. Look at them. They're practically dinosaurs. They even have a long-lost dino cousin that lived in the Cretaceous era, called the Struthiomimus. Its name translates to ostrich-like because of its similar powerful and speedy legs, agility, and even feathers. On the downside, they might not be able to take down larger dinosaurs. The vegetation back in the Mesozoic era would have been different too. Conifers used to dominate land, and ostriches are known to be pretty picky eaters, so they might have had a difficult time finding food back then. There are plenty of reasons to send felines through that time machine too. In the Jurassic period, for example, there were plenty of slow-moving prey to eat and tons of hiding spots in the thick bushes. Felines are sneaky animals, have precise vision, and are extremely good at climbing. Some pack a punch for their size, making them fierce fighters. Lions are good contenders because of their speed and teamwork. They might be able to take down some decent-sized dinosaurs, like the Europasaurus, when working together. Leopards are really good at climbing trees, so they could snatch prey and enjoy it above the ground, where they might be safe from bigger predators. What might be their downfall is again the temperature difference. It was considerably hotter back then. Today's large mammals aren't equipped to deal with that extreme heat. Lions might be the kings of the savannah now, but it would be too hot even for them. If they ever want to grab a spiky-tailed herbivore for lunch like the Tugiangosaurus or Stegosaurus, they might be in for a surprise. One hit from their extremely powerful tail could cause some serious damage. Not to mention run-ins with raptors like the frightening Saurophaganix. The single most likely animal that might survive being roommates with the dinosaurs is the platypus. This quirky Aussie creature is one of those rare egg-laying mammals. It's a fan of freshwater and as close to a living relic as an animal can be. Scientists were able to trace its origin back as far as 120 million years ago. For food, it wields its sensitive beak to catch shrimp and worms underwater. When it dives, skin flaps cover its eyes and ears, so it becomes blind and deaf. But it still uses that beak like a high-tech radar. A grown platypus can even feast on half its body weight in a single night. Scientists have known for a while it shares many traits with reptiles, like its shoulder bones or the fact that it lays eggs. Other creatures that coexisted with the dinosaurs still exist today, just not mammals. Snakes made their way into our fauna in those prehistoric times too, as well as cockroaches and bees. Some species of sharks are even considered to predate the dinosaurs. And if we look at our entire planetary history, we'll see they survived 4 out of 5 periods of mass extinction. Horseshoe crabs have the nickname living fossils because their evolution was much slower than any other animal that we know of. Not because they're not smart, but simply because they found their perfect form much sooner. So they didn't need to make a lot of changes. They have a very rudimentary immune system, but it seems to work wonders. No wonder they stayed pretty much the same for over 400 million years.
So, let's consider velociraptors as pets. Yeah, walking your dino in the park, playing fetch, and we probably could have it now if it hadn't been for those pesky asteroids. To be fair, we ended up with mammals, which, let's face it, it was a pretty solid trade. But here's the big question. Why didn't reptiles make a grand comeback? Why did mammals rise instead? The answer, believe it or not, involves fungi. Yup, the same stuff that gives you athlete's foot and ruins your leftovers also wiped out dinosaurs. Welcome to the weirdest twist in extinction history. It all started with a very bad day 66 million years ago, when a 9-mile-wide asteroid crash-landed in what's now Mexico. The space rock was moving so fast that it vaporized on impact, punching out a crater 10 times its own size. Now, if you remember anything from your physics class, and no judgment if you don't, high speed means high energy. And that energy turned into a blast wave and heat so intense it could have cooked anything in the area instantly. And it didn't stop there. Tiny molten rock beads rained down globally, generating radiation equivalent to 20 million megatons. Forests caught fire, wildfires raged across continents, and the sky filled with soot and sulfuric acid. Earth turned into a planetary air fryer. Then came the blackout. With all that debris in the atmosphere, half of the sunlight couldn't reach the surface, making sea surface temperature drop by 13 degrees Fahrenheit. Within just a few weeks, the planet entered a literal impact winter. There was no sunlight for at least 2 years, and Earth experienced a 15-year-long climate collapse while the dust slowly cleared. 75% of all animal species completely disappeared. Those that survived the initial blast faced tsunamis, starvation, and the collapse of entire food chains. If you were a big animal, say over 55 pounds, your chances were basically zero. And if you were a plant, forget about it. No sunlight means no photosynthesis. And that means no plankton, no trees, no grass, and eventually no herbivores, which means no carnivores either. It was a domino effect straight into extinction. The Earth became a cold, dark graveyard. But there was one organism that looked around and said, yeah, this is perfect. And it was fungi. Now, fungi thrive in moist, dark, and decaying environments. Like a world blanketed in ash full of dead trees and rotting animals. With no sunlight and plummeting temperatures, fungi had a once-in-a-lifetime chance to take over. And they did. Fossil records show widespread fungal contamination in the period after the impact. It was a global fungal bloom, like the moldy icing on an apocalyptic cake. Now, this was great news for fungi, but terrible news for reptiles. See, fungi aren't just harmless mushrooms. Many are pathogens, and they love cold-blooded creatures. Reptiles, including some of the dinosaurs that survived, were ectothermic. This means that they relied on external heat sources to warm their bodies. In a normal situation, a nice sunny rock would do the trick. Bask in the sun, raise your internal temperature, and fight off infections. It's like an induced fever, because, unlike mammals, like me, their bodies don't do it for them. And yes, I'm a mammal too. But, there was no sun, remember? And a cold reptile is a sluggish reptile. Their metabolism slows down, which might sound like a good thing, because it means they can survive on less food and oxygen. But in this new hostile world, it was a disaster. They had less energy to move, less energy to hunt, and couldn't even digest food properly. Their bodies were colder, weaker, and easier for fungi to invade. Reptile reproduction was hit hard too. Most reptiles lay eggs, which are usually buried in the soil or left in hidden nests. But with the soil now damp, cold, and riddled with fungal spores, those eggs became easy targets. Spores penetrated the thin egg shells, destroying the embryos before they could hatch. So not only were adult reptiles struggling to fight infections, but their future generations were being wiped out in the nest. This vulnerability isn't just ancient history. We still see reptiles and amphibians struggling with fungi today. There's a type of fungi, hey, you try to pronounce this, that decimated frog populations. And reptiles in colder or poorly maintained environments have to deal with fungal skin infections. Which brings us to the protagonists of the era, mammals. At the time of the impact, mammals were tiny, scrappy creatures about the size of a rat. But they had a secret weapon, actually several. First off, mammals are warm-blooded, something scientists call endothermic. They produce their own body heat, and that alone gives them a major edge, because most fungi can't tolerate temperatures above 98.6 Fahrenheit. So, while reptiles were freezing and being turned into fungal buffets, mammals were literally too hot to handle. Their warm bodies acted like natural shields against infection. And then there's reproduction. Mammals carry their young inside their bodies. This means that their developing babies were safe and warm, insulated from the hostile external environment, instead of being exposed to the unfriendly world, protected just by a fragile shell. No eggs? No problem. Their metabolism was another secret weapon. Their fast-burning energy systems let them move more, hunt more, and eat more. And because they were small, they didn't need a lot of food. And here's the cool part. Mammals probably ate fungi. Yep, the same organisms ruining the lives of reptiles. And this fungal diet might have helped them boost their immune systems, giving them an evolutionary edge. Over generations, this resistance was passed down, which explains why fungal infections mostly give us an annoying rash, but still wreaks havoc among reptiles. Of course, not all dinos were cold-blooded. In fact, some massive creatures, like the T-Rex, were warm-blooded. But, warm-blooded or not, their size worked against them. You know, giants need giant meals, and in the post-impact world, those meals didn't exist. Being warm-blooded helps, sure, but not when you're too big to feed. Small dinosaurs, however, were a different story. Some survived, and we call them birds. Their small size meant they were lighter and needed less food, and their feathers helped with insulation. Being able to fly was also a flex, since they could reach food in higher places. Their beaks and guts were adapted for flexible diets, and bigger dinos were definitely picky eaters. Evolution did its thing, and the line between birds and dinos blurred forever. The same survival playbook worked for mammals. Small size? Check. Safe reproduction? Check. Versatile diets? Double check. While the rest of the world was on pause, mammals scurried through the underbrush, dodging disaster and waiting for the dust to settle. And then it did. The sun eventually came back. Plants started growing again. Life rebooted. But this time, the stage was different, with big reptiles mostly gone. No more towering predators, no more thundering herds of horned beasts. Mammals had room to stretch, and they did. They grew fast, but not too fast. Mammals never got dinosaur-sized, and that's not a coincidence. Large herbivores today, like elephants, have it easy since their food doesn't run away from them. But large predators are rare for a good reason. Hunting is hard. Your prey sees you coming, so you can't be a big, tall dummy running around. Besides, you need energy to chase, stamina to fight, and a metabolism to match. And you know how that worked out for dinos. Not to mention, mammal bones aren't built like dinosaur bones. The latter had hollow structures, even air sacs, to support their size. But if you stack too much weight on a mammal's bone, it'll snap. Nature has limits, and mammals have learned to work within them. So, when the light returned, reptiles were fewer and more fragile, clinging to the edges of ecosystems. Mammals, on the other hand, were everywhere. Before the asteroid, dinosaurs kept mammals small, and mammals, well, they didn't get much say about that. But now, with the giants gone, mammals could finally level up. And fungi? Well, they stuck around too. But mammals had already passed the ultimate test and came out on top. Thanks to their body heat, internal babies, flexible diets, and a little help from some deadly mushrooms, mammals inherited Earth. So yeah, no pet velociraptor. But maybe that's okay. You got a cat, right? Close enough. Actually, I think dogs are better. How do you feel about that? Let me know in the comments. So yeah, a giant asteroid fell to Earth and destroyed all dinosaurs with a blast wave. That's what we've all heard. It was a terrible disaster, but it was actually much worse. You can't even imagine how unfortunate it was for dinosaurs and what kind of disaster they faced. It wasn't just a piece of solid rock from space, but a lump of molten clay. It provoked not just a tsunami, but giant mud waves. It filled the atmosphere, not only with a burnt smell, but also with an acidic and foul smell of rotten eggs. It didn't just sweep everything away with a blast wave. It provoked a volcanic winter, poisoned the air, and blocked the sun. And do you know what the most unfortunate thing was? If the angle of the fall had been just a little bit different, or if it had fallen a little further away, then there might not have been any global catastrophe. That asteroid, the size of Mount Everest, fell in the coastal part of the Yucatan Peninsula. This place separates the Gulf of Mexico from the Caribbean Sea. The asteroid touched both solid rock and water and immediately triggered strong tsunamis and mega ripples. These are large sand waves that are normally about 3 feet long on average and leave a pattern similar to dunes on the seabed. Oh, by the way, they're really called subaqueous dunes. So, when the meteorite fell, it formed 52-foot-high mega ripples. Can you imagine? Giant waves of sea mud that are almost as high as a 5-story building. But how did the scientists figure it out? They used 3D seismic data and modeled the mega ripples pattern in the program. The data was based on the landscape of the bottom, which was impacted 66 million years ago. First, a powerful strike triggered a strong earthquake that liquefied the seabed layer, and then a high-grade tsunami triggered those mega ripples. That is, while giant waves on the surface flooded the land and went into open waters, large mud waves destroyed the seabed. Ancient fish, dinosaurs, and other underwater creatures didn't stand a chance. But what does this information tell us? Well, first, studying the effects of ancient tsunamis helps to reconstruct the past of our planet. Secondly, it helps us to be prepared if something like this happens in the future. Predicting a scenario like this could save countless lives in case of danger. Okay, there was a total mess in the water at the time of impact. But what was happening on land was much, much worse and scarier. But let's discuss the meteorite itself first and what it consisted of. The scientists analyzed the rocks at the impact site and saw traces of carbonaceous chondrites. This is the rock that makes up most of the meteorites in space. Often this rock contains water, clay, and organic compounds with carbon. It means that, in a sense, a lump of dirt the size of the highest mountain on the planet fell on Earth. And yes, carbonaceous chondrites often have an unusual smell of rotten eggs, tar, or wet hay. So it wasn't just very loud, but it also probably smelled bad. It was a fetid rocket on a planetary scale. However, at the time of the fall, not a single living creature was there to sniff it. All of them lost their lives in the first seconds of the disaster, hit by the devastating blast wave. It set a chain of events that later wiped out all the dinosaurs from the face of the Earth. The peninsula where the meteorite fell turned into a large crater in an instant. Thousands of tons of soot and ash were released into the air. A huge area was filled with thick smoke. The sky turned gray. Black clouds obscured the sun. But wait, where did the ashes come from? The crash site contained huge reserves of flammable materials. In simple words, the meteorite fell into a giant barrel of fuel which started to burn. The sky remained dark. Grass, plants, trees, and bacteria couldn't get enough sunlight. The green world began to wither. And this affected not only the impact site, but almost the entire continent. Even dinosaurs, living far away, felt the low temperatures and lack of ultraviolet light. Dinosaurs couldn't survive in such conditions. The environment was changing too fast. Then it got even worse. A firestorm was spreading in all directions from the place where the meteorite had fallen. The air inside the storm was poisonous and dangerous to inhale. And you know why? Because the meteorite fell in a coastal area and destroyed the seabed. And under that seabed, there were large reserves of sulfur. This toxic mass rose into the air mixed with ash, soot, red-hot pieces of rock, and meteorite particles. Then the winds picked up this cloud and began to spread it across the continent. The rainforests that survived the blast waves were still in danger, as the hot toxic cloud rained down red-hot ash upon them. This caused large-scale fires. The smoke from the burning trees rose and became part of the destructive cloud. The more trees burned, the larger and thicker the poisonous ash cloud grew. What could have stopped this catastrophe? Rain clouds filled with water, right? Good point, but they didn't. When the hot ash and sulfur fumes mixed with water, they created acid rain, a downpour of poisonous, corrosive mud that wiped out all life around it. Fires, firestorm, acid rain, sun blockage – how could dinosaurs survive after that? Where could they escape? Perhaps the ocean shore? Bad idea. Yeah, the water could have protected them from the fire and ashes, but there was another problem. Do you remember mega ripples and giant tsunamis? A huge wave that hit the shore at that moment could easily wash away New York. Smaller waves rolled across the Atlantic Ocean and the North Pacific. So, if dinosaurs on land had tried to hide near the shore, they would have been swept away like specks of dust by that giant tsunami. But what about underwater dinosaurs? They were not affected by the tsunami and the fire cloud, but they were trapped. Red-hot poison particles of ash and mud fell into the ocean in huge quantities and poisoned the water. Algae and phytoplankton were destroyed. Because of this, millions of fish lost their food supply. And as a result, larger fish and marine dinosaurs were left with nothing to eat. Large-scale famine triggered extinction in the ocean. Toxic particles poisoned the water for many marine life forms. The gills of fish couldn't extract pure oxygen from the water, which only worsened the situation. Near the Yucatan Peninsula, the ocean floor with its coral reefs and ancient sea creatures was destroyed. This huge part of Earth's biodiversity disappeared, upsetting the balance of the oceans. Of course, the destruction couldn't go on forever. At one point, the ashes cooled and settled to the ground. The sulfur cloud dispersed, the fires went out, and the air became clearer. Warm rays of sunlight began to shine down on Earth again. But there was something sinister about the silence. The planet no longer heard the rustle of pterodactyl wings, the roar of a hungry tyrannosaurus, and the noise of a velociraptor's fast feet. The storm had passed, along with the dinosaurs. By the way, some flying lizards and small animals survived. Later, they evolved into modern mammals and birds. It wasn't the meteorite that destroyed dinosaurs. Fires couldn't do it either. Dinosaurs disappeared because of the famine caused by the catastrophe. Disruption of the food chain led to the mass extinction of these magnificent lizards. After the catastrophe, life began to blossom again. However, the emergence of large mammals was still a long way off. But now, millions of years have passed. Large elephants, rhinos, and other animals walk on Earth, along with the most unique mammal on the planet, the human. Hundreds of dinosaur species roamed our planet, and researchers give a name to a new type approximately every 2 weeks. It's not fair to stick to T-Rex, Stegosaurus, Spinosaurus, and other famous sauruses all the time. They've had their chance to shine in the movies and across the internet. So let's check out dinosaurs that no one talks about. First on our list is Torosaurus. The special thing about this dinosaur is that it definitely had one of the largest skulls ever found. It was big because of this frill going from the back of the animal's skull and covering its neck. The frill wasn't there for protection. It was probably just to show off a bit. The bone in the frill was thin and full of holes. As you can see, it's very similar to Triceratops. There are still debates about whether these two are the same species, but more and more studies show that they were more like cousins. They were probably similar in size, but Torosaurus had a longer head with big openings, as well as longer frill bones with a groove on top. It also had more pairs of horns on the back of the frill. Some like to call Torosaurus a bull lizard. These fellows were plant eaters that may have lived in social groups. They existed at approximately the same age, but Torosaurus somehow ended up on the less popular side of the family. Kentrosaurus was a small stegosaurus. It's one of the least cuddly dinosaurs of all time. Its long, thin spikes seem to be a pretty good defense mechanism. Stegosaurus, on the other hand, had shorter, thicker spikes that were less likely to bend or snap when the animal used them. Now, you wouldn't want to get anywhere near Kentrosaurus, though. Its tail could swing in a big half circle and hit with a force strong enough to break a human skull. Any volunteers? No? Okay. One scientist used scans of the dino's fossils to make a computer model of its skeleton. The model showed that Kentrosaurus had a flexible neck. It must have been really useful for looking around to see if something interesting was going on or if there was any dangerous animals trying to sneak up. Kentrosaurus typically walked on all 4 legs with straight hind limbs. The computer model tells us it could spread its front legs out to its sides, too. Maybe it was a way to protect its belly during fights. Stegosauruses, in general, had tails that were like big weights at the back of their bodies. That's why their balance point was closer to their hips. That's also the reason why they could easily stand on their hind legs and swing their tails around. So most people haven't heard of heterodontosaurs, even though their fossils showed that dinosaurs got feathers way back before we thought and in groups where we didn't expect it. In 2008, paleontologists identified the first known skull of a baby heterodontosaurus, which was less than 2 inches long, smaller than a tea bag. This baby dinosaur had relatively big eyes and a short snout compared to bigger ones of its kind. Now, what's really interesting is that some scientists used to think that Heterodontosaurus's tusks, like those of modern warthogs, only appeared when they were fully grown. But it seems they had them from the early stages of their life. Heterodontosaurs had 5 fingers on each hand, 2 of which were opposable. It was a good tool, considering the animal probably ate both plants and meat. Humans have different types of teeth, some for biting, some for chewing, and also canines. But most reptiles have just one kind of teeth. Heterodontosaurus was special because it had 3 different types of teeth: small peg-like ones, big teeth resembling canines, and square-shaped teeth that did the cutting job. Scientists are not entirely sure how this creature used these different types of teeth. Maybe it was for digging up roots, breaking into termite nests, or even defending themselves against dangerous animals. Okay, say this name with me now: Psittacosaurus. She was quite a common dinosaur in its time, but she never still gained popularity. Scientists found out that when these dinosaurs were young, they probably crawled, considering they had longer arms and short legs. But as they got older, between 4 and 6 years old, their hind legs started growing much faster and became much longer than their front legs. So later in life, they likely didn't move on all fours anymore, but walked on 2 legs. Inside the stomach of one of these creatures, scientists found pebbles. This shows the animals either had a hard time digesting what it ate, or it didn't chew its food very well. Its beak looks quite familiar. That's how it got its specific name, a parrot lizard. It was really strong, and some believe the creature used it to crack and open tough nuts and seeds before the pebbles in its stomach helped mash them up for digestion. These guys might have been good at swimming. They had broad feet, and the shape of their tail could have helped them move in the water relatively easily. Some scientists even believe they might have spent most of their life swimming in rivers and lakes. In 2004, researchers found something really sweet. 24 young parrot lizards huddled together. They were too big to be hatchlings, so it could be a bunch of teenagers who had left their nests and then formed a group where they could support one another and defend themselves better. But apparently that plan didn't work out so well. Now check this one out, Stygimoloch, or as they call it, Styx demon. We're looking at a peaceful plant-eating creature with bony spikes and knobs on its skull. Most scientists believe it was a younger form of this fellow, even though they used to think they were a separate species. Stygimoloch is smaller than its more popular cousin, but it's also more robust and has a pretty thick neck. This dinosaur, with small forelimbs and long hind legs 3 feet high, which is half as high as an average human. That doesn't sound dangerous in the world of giant and fierce dinosaurs, but the animal had a very thick skull roof. Maybe it wasn't the strongest tool to defend itself, but it probably helped in combat with rivals from its own species. They most likely headbutted to win the hearts of their chosen ones. But rivals from its own herd were a piece of cake compared to the predators that might have gone after it. After all, this dino lived at the same time as old T-Rex. Now, when someone tells you to picture a dinosaur, Chisaosaurus would probably be the last thing coming to your mind. It looks as if you've put together pieces of random animals and tried to make your friends believe this truly was a real animal that once roamed the earth. But it's actually a dino, with giant sharp claws on its forelimbs, a bulky body, and a long neck ending with a tiny head. Now, don't let the claws scare you though. These creatures didn't go after other animals since they were herbivores, but these claws could protect the animal from intruders and predators. The full scientific name of this creature describes it as a giant sloth-like reptile from China. This animal was one of the biggest and oldest members of the group where it belonged, which lived around 115 million years ago. No, I wasn't around then. At first, it was hard to tell which animals were related to this weird-looking dinosaur. But in the 1990s, scientists made a conclusion that they were modified plant-eating theropods, which is similar to carnivorous dinos. They also most likely had feathers and small wings, like some sort of a very big turkey. Now, you can't find living dinosaurs nowadays, which is a good thing, mostly, but you can still meet some creatures that might have gone to lunch with them. The frilled shark, for example, is a living fossil that comes from a family of sharks that have been around for about 80 million years. One of the coolest things about it is its long, eel-like body that can grow as long as 6 feet. It has 6 pairs of gills on its throat, which help the frilled shark breathe in the deep, cold ocean where there isn't much oxygen. The shark can move very quickly, like a snake, to catch its prey when it least expects it. Little frilled sharks take an exceptionally long time to grow, up to 3.5 years, which is one of the longest times for any animal with a backbone. The Chinese giant salamander is another living fossil that can tell you what was going on Earth around 170 million years ago. Now, when I say tell, I really mean it, as it can make sounds like hisses, whistles, and barks, and even a noise that sounds like a crying kid. The biggest Chinese salamander found so far weighed 130 pounds, as heavy as 2 Dalmatians, and was almost 6 feet long. Giant salamanders like to be alone. Hey, I want to be alone. And will chase away other salamanders from their space, except when it's time to start a family. During the day, they hide and sleep under rocks. They can make a special substance from their skin that keeps predators away. Now, gharials are reptiles that have been around for about 38 million years. They live in India and Nepal in slow-moving, muddy rivers. Sadly, there are very few gharials left in the wild, less than 100. These creatures can't control their body temperature, so they need to sunbathe to get warm or cool down in the water if they get too hot. Their eyes are close together and face forward, which helps them see in 3 dimensions and judge distances more accurately. Gharials also have a transparent third eyelid that protects their eyes when they're underwater. They have over 100 sharp teeth, but they can't chew their food. Instead, they use their strong jaws to grab prey and then, swallow it whole. The alligator gar is a fish that has a family history of more than 100 million years. It still has some cool features from ancient times, like being able to breathe both air and water. It also has a special spiral-shaped intestine, like a shark. The alligator gar is one of the biggest and heaviest fish in North America. Just like an alligator, it has a long body and snout, plus a row of sharp teeth. But instead of legs, the gar has fins to help it swim underwater. The tuatara isn't a lizard as you might think, and isn't a dinosaur either. This New Zealand resident is one of the most unique animals in the world. Scientists love studying tuataras because they can help us understand how today's lizards and snakes evolved. One of the coolest things about the tuatara is its third eye, called a parietal eye, on its head. It has its own lens, retina, and a nerve that connects it to the brain. Scientists think it might help the tuatara know when it's light or dark outside and absorb sunlight to make vitamin D or help them keep their body temperature exactly right. Tuataras can live an extraordinarily long time, up to 100 years. Cassowaries are the youngsters on our list, as they've been around for only 60 million years. They have some things in common with dinosaurs, like their 3-toed feet and how they breathe. Cassowaries love to eat fruit, lots and lots of fruit. This love of fruit helps the rainforest because when cassowaries eat the fruit, their bodies don't harm the seeds inside. As they move around the forest, they spread these seeds, you can guess how, with their own natural fertilizer, helping new plants grow. Cassowaries are big birds, about 6 feet tall and weigh over 100 pounds. They have a special claw on each foot that is 5 inches long, and they can use it to kick real fast. If they feel threatened, they can charge, kick, and even jump on someone. They can also leap up to 5 feet in the air. So, the best thing to do is stay far, far away from where they live. The order Notostraca is a group of crustaceans that you may know as tadpole shrimp or shield shrimps. These animals have been around for about 360 million years. They have a wide, flat shell that covers their head, and they have a pair of eyes on top. These creatures can be found all over the world in different kinds of water, like freshwater, brackish water, and even salty pools. They can also look different depending on where they live. Notostracans aren't picky eaters and can snack on pretty much anything, from plants to small animals and other shrimps. Some of them are considered pests in places like California rice paddies because they stir up the mud, which blocks sunlight from reaching the young rice plants. Sturgeons are some of the largest fish species on the planet. They live only in the cool waters of the northern hemisphere and never travel below the equator. Even though they are huge, sturgeons don't have teeth. They eat by sucking food off the bottom of rivers, gulfs, lakes, and oceans. Scientists believe that sturgeons came from a group of fish that first appeared around 419 million years ago, long before dinosaurs even existed. Their ancestors survived a big extinction event that wiped out 90% of all species and went on to become the largest fish in many rivers in North America and Eurasia. Sturgeons can live up to 100 years old or even older. Female sturgeons can lay up to 3 million eggs at a time, but not all of the eggs eventually turn into real fish. Our next hero, the Pacific lamprey, has successfully lived through at least 4 mass extinctions. Its ancient ancestors evolved over 450 million years ago. These creatures have cartilage instead of bones and a third eye, which is a special light-sensing organ on top of their heads. Instead of a regular jaw, they have a mouth surrounded by teeth. They latch onto prey and sup up body fluids like real underwater vampires. And although he wasn't living underwater, the story goes that King Henry I of England might have lost his life because of a lamprey. The English monarch loved this fish so much that he defied doctors' orders to stop eating its flesh. He got sick every time he'd have it, but the lack of bones and the unusual taste made the royal fall in love with it. As a result, he got some scary symptoms from eating lamprey and eventually passed away. Can you say clueless? The elephant fish, also called the Australian ghost shark, has been on Earth for around 400 million years. Even though they're related to sharks, they aren't actually sharks. Instead of bones, their bodies are made entirely of cartilage. These fish have a special shiny tissue in their eyes that can make their eyes look like they change color from yellow to green. Elephant fish can be pretty tough and will fight back if they feel threatened. They like to be alone and usually don't hang out with other fish. Horseshoe crabs also deserve the title of survival champs, as they've been around even before dinosaurs, since 450 million years ago. 4 species are still roaming the ocean from Maine all the way to Mexico. Horseshoe crabs are more like spiders than ticks than they are like real crabs. They have 9 eyes, plus extra light sensors near their tails so they can see really well. They breathe underwater using flap-like gills near their belly, and sometimes they use these gills to swim upside down. Every spring, when the tide is high, these creatures come up to the beach at night to mate and lay their eggs, and you can see hundreds of thousands of them.
The Tyrannosaurus rex, the formidable predator, the world-known celebrity of the animal kingdom, the king of all dinos. Since its discovery in 1902, this dangerous predator has fascinated both researchers and the regular public. But despite its terrifying reputation, there were actually other beasts that could defeat the T-Rex. And one of the true nemeses of this dinosaur was the Triceratops, a herbivore. But despite its plant-based diet, the dino was huge and had 2 nightmarish, large horns and a smaller one, along with thickened bones which added to its defenses and helped protect itself from dreadful predators like the T-Rex. This dino was something like proof that herbivores were no pushovers. Its formidable horns were about a foot wide at their base and tapered into mean points capable of skewering any predator, even a T-Rex like Juicy Barbecue. The colossal skull of the Triceratops sported an enormous frill made of protective solid bone, which was topped with hornlets. From the tip of the animal's beak to the spiked rim of the frill, the head of the Triceratops could reach a whopping 10 feet in length and weigh around a ton. This gargantuan construction, the head of the dino, was attached to the body with the help of a ball and socket joint. This allowed the dino to swivel its head around with astonishing speed, brandishing its horns to scare predators away. That's one of the reasons why a T-Rex that decided to attack a Triceratops was actually taking a big risk. The battle could easily go either way. Of course, the king of the dinosaur world could win and get its long-awaited feast, but just as likely, the hunted could become the hunter and end the T-Rex's game. Now, how about we find some more cool and lesser-known facts about those intriguing creatures, dinosaurs? For example, dinos almost certainly did not roar. Scientists think they might have cooed instead. More accurately, they probably produced sounds in ways similar to the way ostriches boom or doves coo. You see, many modern birds use a method of producing sounds called closed-mouth vocalization. Sounds are made by inflating the throat rather than passing air through the syrinx, the vocal organ of birds. In other words, the Jurassic Park movies got it all wrong. A lot of early dino reconstructions appeared under the influence of those scary noises that we associate with modern predators, like lions. So, on screen, dinosaurs have their mouths open when they produce sounds, just like lions when they roar. But real dinos wouldn't have done that, especially not before charging at their prey. They wouldn't have advertised their presence to other animals nearby, not when all they wanted was to have a meal. The Quetzalcoatlus was a member of the ancient group of flying reptiles, pterosaurs, and it was also the largest flying animal to have ever lived on Earth. The giraffe-sized creature had thin limbs, a startlingly long beak, and a staggering 40-foot wingspan. Researchers believe that these creatures could have also used their folded-up wings as legs, so they probably walked on all fours. Scientists discovered the Quetzalcoatlus about 50 years ago, but they still have a tricky time trying to piece together the details of this animal's life. For example, how did it even manage to lift its ginormous body off the ground when flying? Whatever the answer is, this creature is our first real look at the entirety of the largest animals ever to fly. One of the reasons why it's been taking so long to unearth the secrets of the Quetzalcoatlus is because this creature had hollow bones that helped it to fly, just like modern flying animals. So, when you find these potato chips-like bones preserved in super hard rock, you need to somehow remove them without destroying them. And that's a really tough task. The Tyrannosaurus rex was quite a slow runner. Its speed was likely to be just about 10 miles per hour, which is approximately as fast as the speed of an average human runner. As for T-Rex babies, according to hatchling recreations from the American Museum of Natural History, they were pretty cute. About the size of super skinny turkeys and covered with downy feathers. The largest land-based dino was the Argentinosaurus. This massive animal often reached up to 130 feet in length and 69 feet in height. Considering the average blue whale is around 70 feet long, you can easily imagine just how giant that dinosaur was. Many dinos had feathers, and I'm not only talking about avian ones. The largest feathered dinosaur we know about was the Eutyrannus huali, which translates as a beautiful feathered tyrant. It was a super predator and cousin of the T-Rex. Scientists think that the dino most likely relied on its feathers to stay warm. However surprising it may sound, some of the biggest dinosaurs were actually herbivores. Let's take the Brachiosaurus and Apatosaurus, for example. These creatures were giant, but followed a plant-based diet. Now, I'm not sure if you should try it or not, but apparently, you can tell the difference between a simple stone and a dinosaur fossil by licking it. It may not sound like the most legitimate approach, but even paleontologists sometimes find themselves doing this. The thing is, if you lick a potential fossil, it will slightly stick to your tongue. That's because fossils are way more porous than stones. When dinosaurs first saw the light of day during the Triassic period, around 230 million years ago, Earth's continents were clustered together and formed one giant supercontinent called Pangaea. Over the next 165 million years, Pangaea slowly drifted apart, and that separated many dinosaur species from one another. And still, most of the world's dinosaur fossils are found in three places: the high-altitude Badlands of China, North America, and Argentina have the largest amount of fossils, or at least easily accessible ones. In reality, most parts of the world are covered with fossils, but those located in desert-like environments are easier to find due to the lack of vegetation. Interestingly, most fossilized dino bones aren't bones anymore. The fossilization process often occurs when something gets trapped between layers of sediment or sand. For millions of years, those remnants stay there. At one point, they got surrounded by a layer of water. It replaces the original organic material with minerals. In other words, it's not the real thing anymore. It's a rock-like copy. The Triceratops boasted 3 giant horns sticking out of its head, but its teeth were even more fascinating. This dino had around 800 teeth, and new ones kept growing throughout its life. These teeth grew in sets of 36 to 40 tooth columns, with each column having 3 to 5 teeth, vertically stacked on one another. Some dinos had hollow bones, like today's birds. These creatures stored air in their bones, which helped them improve their breathing abilities. It made these dinosaurs lighter on their feet and allowed them to breathe much more efficiently. The Nigersaurus replaced its teeth every 2 weeks. This unique creature had rows and rows of teeth in reserve. They were hidden away in its mouth, and when a set of teeth wore out, they fell out, and the next row moved into position. Dinosaurs didn't all go extinct at the same time as soon as the asteroid crashed into Earth. Instead, the space rock likely triggered a chain reaction of events which changed the face of the planet. Of course, it didn't happen overnight, but over the next few hundred or even thousands of years. As a result, all but avian dinosaurs went extinct. The word dinosaur came from the Greek language. Deinos means terrible, and sauros means lizard. So basically, dinosaur can be translated to terrible lizard. You may object that not all dinosaurs were terrifying predators. This name might be appropriate for the T-Rex, but not, let's say, the tiny May. Rumor has it that when Sir Richard Owen, an English biologist, came up with the name for dinosaurs, he used the word terrible in a different sense. He described those ancient creatures as fearfully great, as in far larger in size than any previously discovered reptiles.
When we say extinction, we usually think of dinosaurs that went to lunch with a humongous asteroid and were wiped out from the face of the Earth. We don't think of ourselves possibly going away in the near future. But what we forget is that there have been 5 mass extinctions that our planet witnessed in the last 500 million years, not just one. And we can be nearing the 6th one, where one of the species to possibly disappear are humans. The first great mass extinction came about 440 million years ago in the Ordovician period. Back then, life was mostly thriving in the oceans and along the coastlines. Biodiversity was great at the time. There were thousands of different species, trilobites, sea scorpions, and all kinds of weird-looking mollusks, and even fish. You name it, Ordovician had it. But then, the temperature around the planet started to drop. The overall warm climatic zones became colder and colder, until the oceans got covered with thick sheets of ice. Most of the marine species weren't ready for such abrupt changes. Imagine a trilobite serenely crawling along the bottom of the sea and suddenly bumping into a glacier. Yeah, it's like living your entire life in a beach bungalow, only to find yourself in an igloo one day. The event was dubbed Late Ordovician Glaciation, which led to Late Ordovician mass extinction. Over 60% of all species that lived in that period disappeared. Only ancient fossils were left for paleontologists to discover hundreds of millions of years later. Nobody still knows exactly what caused the temperature drop at the time. The main theory is that the CO2 levels in the atmosphere fell sharply. It led to cooling down the entire surface of Earth. But the reasons for such a collapse are still under debate. However, that wasn't the worst mass extinction event in the history of our planet. Despite more than half of all living creatures being wiped out, biodiversity on Earth restored itself in the following 5 million years. Life went on until another catastrophe struck. Within the span of 20 to 25 million years, from about 375 to 350 million years ago, several extinction events occurred. They were like pulses that damaged a lot of marine species. Arthropods, like scorpions and mites, lots of various fish, including sharks, all were in decline. Overall, more than 75% of all living beings disappeared back then, who were mainly in the oceans. The reasons for such events are even more unclear than those before the late Ordovician mass extinction. Most scientists now believe those waves were caused by changes in the sea level and a lack of oxygen in the oceans. A lot of plants quickly moved to land and adapted to living outside of water. And since they were the main source of oxygen in the ocean, all those fish and sea scorpions were in for a very unpleasant surprise. The booming growth of plants on land also removed much of the CO2 in the atmosphere and enriched it with oxygen instead. This led to an abrupt temperature fall again. And although no new ice age followed, many land animals couldn't adapt to the new conditions. The bitter irony was that the major part of them had just recently crawled out on land from the ocean, looking for a better environment. Ah, well. This was only the first wave, though. The reasons for the second one, that came about several million years later, are still unknown. Scientists think there could have been mass volcanic eruptions, or even meteor strikes, but those are just hypotheses. Then another 100 million years passed without much trouble. Species rose and fell, evolved and disappeared, but the cycle of life continued, until about 250 million years ago, when the third mass extinction event occurred. It happened in the Permian period, the last period of the Paleozoic era, and it was so catastrophic that it had all the chances of becoming the last mass extinction on our planet. Scientists are still unsure what caused so many species to be eliminated. But the fact is that around 96% of all living creatures in the world were gone. One theory suggests that volcanoes started being overly active. They threw millions of tons of methane and basalt into the atmosphere. Asteroid strikes might have added to the damage too. The sky was literally covered in dark clouds of ash. The proto-mammals and reptiles tried to hide from the black and gray mist, but it was everywhere. It was like hiding from the air itself. Another culprit could have been microbes that loved their methane-rich environments. They could have quickly spread in the oceans and literally choked the rest of the marine life forms there. But whatever the reason, the Permian mass extinction event was the most massive and destructive of all the Great Five. All life on our planet could have ended right then and there. But those 4% that persisted eventually spread across the Earth and started a new era. Yay! This time, they lived a peaceful life for only 50 million years. And then, whammo! The fourth great mass extinction hit. It was different though, slowly creeping across the planet over the last 18 million years of the Triassic period. The extinction occurred in numerous short pulses, wiping out several species at a time. A slight climate change here, an abrupt temperature fall there, and very upset animals and fish all around. The main reason for that was again the volcanic activity at the time. Fiery mountains started spewing out ash and gas once more, lowering the oxygen levels and suffocating life. Well, that was harsh. The gases and other substances thrown out of the volcanoes' mouths changed the Earth's climate again. Sea levels rose because of that, and some researchers believe even the pH levels were altered. That means the marine life that used to be swimming peacefully in more alkaline waters suddenly found itself trying to survive in acid. But apart from causing bursts of extinction, these changes also ushered in the era of dinosaurs. It didn't begin immediately, of course. Some species evolved and slowly grew into the mighty animals we've heard so much about. Their extinction was the last of the Great Five, and certainly the most well-known. About 65 million years ago, when dinos were still ruling both land and ocean, an enormous asteroid came from outer space and fell right on Earth. The impact was so powerful, it left a huge crater in the Yucatan Peninsula, and the explosion sent billions of tons of debris into the air. The dinosaurs that lived far away from the impact zone raised their heads and saw black and churning clouds blocking the sun. It remained for years, drastically dropping the temperatures. In addition to the cold that followed, the asteroid hit a carbonate rock that had a lot of flammable material in it. The impact led to an explosion. The chemicals mixed in the air and produced sulfuric acid, and that acid fell down in the form of rains, altering the pH of the oceans. Aquatic creatures that were again used to more alkaline waters went, "Oh, come on!" That didn't help, though. The changes were abrupt and severe. About 75% of all animals and plants went extinct in a matter of years, unable to survive the new, harsh conditions on the planet. But some persisted. Many of them were reptiles, like crocodiles and turtles, which managed to survive even up to this day, looking almost the same as they did back in the dinosaurs' days. Others were mammals, which had lived in the shadow of the mighty dinos and hid from them in dark corners. But now that the giant animals were gone, they began to flourish, bringing in the Cenozoic era, the one that lasts to this day. And today, we might be witnessing the sixth great mass extinction. According to scientists, with the evolution of humans, a lot of different plants and animals have gone from the face of our planet, never to return. The good thing is, mass extinctions have always happened over a span of several million years, so we might still have time to recognize it, prepare, and counteract. What do you think? Shall we? Now, our planet has gone through 5 mass extinctions. One of them was so bad, it wiped out over 95% of life forms on our planet. Scientists think they might have found the culprit: volcanoes. Scientists took some ancient rocks from a dozen global locations and found elevated levels of mercury, which was released by volcanoes millions of years ago. This points to volcanic eruptions as the probable cause of the Permian-Triassic extinction event. The mercury didn't just come from rocks, it was from the atmosphere. This means that when the volcanoes erupted, they released this poisonous gas into the air. They produced about 720,000 cubic miles of ash, vastly more than the infamous eruption of Mount St. Helens. The gas left a trace that marks one of history's most significant catastrophes, setting the stage for the age of dinosaurs. These eruptions most likely released mercury by igniting large coal deposits. Shallower waters showed mercury spikes right at the extinction's main horizon, while deeper sections recorded spikes tens of thousands of years earlier. This could mean that the effects of the volcanic activity and the extinction it triggered varied across different ocean depths. That means that the extinction was prolonged and complex. It not only caused significant climate warming at the time, but also led to some other toxic events, like acid rain, which made the situation even worse for plants and animals. Although few things have made it from the Permian period to the present day, we can get an idea of what the world was like back then from the fossils found in eastern Kansas. Now, 252 million years ago, the Earth was thriving. The Earth's continents were coming together to form the supercontinent Pangaea. The land was mostly dry, and the Earth looked like a harsh, arid desert, vast stretches of land with minimal water sources. The climate varied from scorching summers to frigid winters. There were some plants here and there, mostly conifers, large ferns, and primitive mosses in places with more water. The Earth was dominated by dinosaur-like creatures like pelycosaurs or therapsids, often called mammal-like reptiles. There was also the fierce Dimetrodon, with its awesome snail-like spine. These three were the top predators of their time. Smaller reptiles and amphibians also populated the landscape, alongside burgeoning insects like beetles and dragonflies, which thrived during that dry time. But all the interesting stuff mostly happened in shallow tropical seas. Marine environments were bustling with life: rich coral reefs, shellfish called brachiopods, animals known as bryozoans, and large single-cell fusilinids, which kind of look like they're covered in moss. Small funny ammonoids were quite popular as well, often hanging out in the oceans alongside brachiopods, bony fish, and sharks. Creepy trilobites, ancient marine creatures that first appeared 500 million years ago in the Cambrian period, but then persisted up to the Permian period. Trilobites were very diverse, active predators to scavengers or plankton eaters. However, almost all these beautiful creatures were about to disappear during the Permian-Triassic extinction. Now, this extinction was truly ruthless. More than two-thirds of amphibian and reptile species disappeared, and nearly one-third of all insect species were wiped out. Usually, the insects are resilient survivors, which shows how catastrophic this event was. Among these extinct animals was the terrifying Meganeuropsis, a giant dragonfly with a wingspan of nearly 2.5 feet, once found in central Kansas near Elmo. This place is famous for its rich collection of Permian insect fossils, including ancient crickets and cockroaches. For a while, it was a mystery what exactly happened. Theories range from a massive asteroid strike and natural pollutants choking the oceans of oxygen, to dust clouds, to cosmic volcanic eruptions blocking the sun and cooling the planet. There was evidence for each of these scenarios, but the recent discovery points to the volcanoes theory after all. There's also a possibility that the reason wasn't just the volcanoes. NASA-funded researchers have recently uncovered what might be the fingerprints of this ancient perpetrator, or at least one of its accomplices. By investigating rocks around the globe, they've found evidence pointing to a massive asteroid strike as a possible culprit. They found unusual molecules shaped like soccer balls, known as fullerenes. These molecules contain rare gases that usually come from space. This suggests that an enormous space rock, perhaps as large as Mount Everest, crashed into the Earth, contributing to extinction. There seems like there might have been a series of catastrophic events. The volcanoes were spewing vast quantities of lava and gas that altered the climate, Pangea was forming and disrupting weather and ocean patterns, and an asteroid decided to join in as the cherry on top. Lucky for us, nature is super persistent and always finds its way to be reborn. This just proves how resilient the Earth is. Now, what's interesting is this wasn't the only time that happened. The Late Devonian extinction, which happened around 360 million years ago, is also tied to volcanic activity. Volcanic eruptions and the proliferation of land plants could have altered the nutrients flowing into the oceans. The Triassic-Jurassic extinction, which happened around 200 million years ago, a bit before the dinosaurs, might have also been a result of a volcanoes plus asteroid impact combo. And finally, about 66 million years ago, the last dramatic shift happened on Earth. Our planet went from the age of dinosaurs to the age of mammals. This momentous change is known as the KPG extinction. Just like the Permian extinction, it was a sudden event that ushered in new forms of life. And, once again, there are two major theories about what happened. The most popular theory tells us that the dinosaurs disappeared because of a massive asteroid. The Chicxulub meteorite smashed into present-day southern Mexico, creating the Chicxulub crater. The meteor was about 6 miles wide and hurtling towards Earth at incredible speeds. The impact was so powerful that it vaporized everything nearby instantly and released more energy than any other event in a billion years. The aftermath was catastrophic. Earthquakes shook the continents, and the ground itself heaved like a stormy sea. As the dust thrown up by the asteroid settled, it fell back to Earth like rain, heating up the atmosphere so much that forests worldwide burst into flames. Not far behind was a gigantic tsunami, stirred up by the ocean floor's upheaval, which swamped coastlines near the Gulf of Mexico. Not all dinosaurs perished immediately. In places like New Zealand, some dinosaur populations survived initially. However, a dark, ash-filled sky eventually covered the globe, blocking out the sun and plunging the world into cold and darkness. The long-term effect of the asteroid is what really sealed the fate for dinosaurs. Without sunlight, the food chain collapsed rapidly. Herbivores slowly disappeared, followed by the carnivores that depended on them, and the ash settling back to the Earth exacerbated the environmental upheaval, with fluctuating temperatures making survival tough. But there's another theory that says that, like with the Permian extinction, the asteroid was just the cherry on top. The dinosaur extinction was inevitable because of the volcanoes. Around 1 million years before the dinosaurs' demise, massive volcanic activity began under where India is today. This event created the Deccan Traps, a vast plateau formed from layers of lava that covered an area as large as France. For hundreds of thousands of years, these volcanoes spewed sulfur dioxide and carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. This turned the skies dark and the rain acidic, poisoning food sources and turning oceans into toxic baths. These changes were gradual but relentless, stressing ecosystems, breaking food chains, and leading to a slow but steady decline in many species, including the dinosaurs. Although it's not certain which theory is true, scientists now think that both were equally to blame. Maybe one day we'll have a clear picture of how the reign of the dinosaurs came to such an abrupt end.